Like, who in your mind is an ideal person for this type of volunteer work?
Okay, well, first of all, I think you need to be culturally competent. And that means, you need to have an understanding about, race, sex, gender, disability, you need to be informed. You need to be informed about the client group or the people with whom you're working. You need to
So
have,
maybe a person with a degree in social work or sociology, or possibly like, could you see a young person, like a student type?
yeah, that would be great. Here's the thing is you don't need a degree.
Okay,
That's
good. That's
great.
good. That's good to know.
That's great. You need to be a kind and caring person, and you need to be biases will hurt your work, so if you have some racial biases, or if you're ageist or you're ableist or you're sexist, obviously that's going to affect the people with whom you're working, in a really negative way. I
Would
guess
you say that a person, and I'm kind of setting this up for the right answer, but would you say that a person should feel sorry for residents?
I no, I think that is very disempowering. Now, that being said, when you see people so disempowered who may be, being abused or neglected, it's really difficult not to feel horrible on their behalf. I mean, I don't. I'm not sure if you'd be human if.
Right, right.
So
But I mean, it's not about pitying, going in
no,
with like a,
no,
well, I'm just gonna hang out with the people and spend, like you have
no,
to, you have to want to, you empathize, probably, I imagine a lot, use a lot of empathy skills where your
mm,
feelings kind of, you try to match your feelings with the person, the resident, your experience, you try to find that a similar common ground with the person
right.
that you're talking to. I
No,
think
like I said, it's so important to help residents feel empowered.
mm,
That's the most important thing is, because you want to help them feel empowered so they can advocate on their own behalf. You want them to make, informed decisions about their own lives. So I think, the best thing I can do is to provide them information and resources and say, look, these are your rights,
mm,
and a lot of times, um, if they, want me to assist them, I'll say, okay, do you want me, like, for instance, if we have to go into talk to the nursing home administrator or the nurse or the social worker, I'll say, would you prefer to do this on your own, by yourself? Would you like me to go in the room with you and just, stand there and be supportive? Or, would you like me to do most of the talking? How do you want to do this?
mm.
Um,
Yeah, you meet them where they're at, and then you offer to assist in a way that they feel comfortable. I imagine
right,
that that's what a lot of the training will cover and stuff like that. But I think,
right,
like you said, a person that would be great would be like a good-hearted person, a person that likes to empower others, a person that isn't biased, that doesn't hold a lot of bias, um,
right.
and or at least recognizes their bias if they
I
have
think I
it.
think you're right. I think coming too much from a charity model, where
Right.
you want to rescue people,
Or
that
babysit or
that's just
whatever. Yeah.
disempowering. You
Right.
want to help them to do things
Right. Now would
depending on the circumstances on their own. Obviously, some people, really do need someone to advocate on their behalf. They may be, in advanced stages of dementia, and in that case, usually they have a power of attorney. So in that case, you're working quite a lot with their families.
mm,
You know,
now do you see like a certain age that would work, like do you feel like somebody like straight out of high school could do this, or do you feel like it would be more of a college aged person, or like
Mhm.
do
um,
you think
let's
there's a
see. At
certain
one
age?
point in the ombudsman program, when I was in training, there was a young woman in our training, and she was just out of high school. and I think she had just started college. You know, it might have been her first semester.
That's great.
So I don't think age is an issue.
That's awesome.
You know,
Yeah.
and you know, you just, in fact, it it's so sad to me that, you know, we think, you know, teenagers can only hang out with teenagers and children need to be segregated only with children, and you know, we need to older adults need to just be with older adults. I think that's, in my opinion, part of the problem with society right now. We need to have more of a cross-cultural and mixing of ages and backgrounds, and part of the problem why things are the way they are, I think, has to do with this.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, I find things uncommon with, you know, 80-year-olds quite a lot, sometimes more than people my own age. You know,
Yeah,
so
no, I agree. I think it's great. I'm glad that you saw a volunteer that young. I think it's a really great experience. I imagine if you're going to go into the field and you really want to kind of get your feet wet, you know, and
right.
kind of get some hours and get some, you
Well,
know.
that's right. A lot of, you know, for a lot of colleges, like in social work, you need volunteer hours, and this is perfect, you
Right.
know, for
Yeah, no,
that.
you could definitely get a lot of experience. I think it would be I was in the AmeriCorps for 2 years in my early 20s after I got out of I got my bachelor's degree. I had a bachelor's degree in English, and that doesn't do
Mm-hmm.
much. So
Mm-hmm.
I did paraprofessional essentially community service for 2 years through the AmeriCorps, and it was wonderful. And I
Oh,
got
that's
my
wonderful.
and in that I worked for a school-based social work agency, and that's what inspired me to go
Mm-hmm.
back and get my teaching certification. And it taught me a lot about working with students in at-risk, you know, environments. And it really, I don't know, it gave me a lot of really great grounding and perspective and stuff like that.
I
So
tried to talk my son into doing AmeriCorps after high school, and I provided him all of this information, but he decided to go a different route. But it's a wonderful,
oh, it is. And if
wonderful
you have a
program.
disability and you do AmeriCorps, none of there's a lot of great incentive regarding a lot of the work requirements that you don't get dinged, you don't lose your social security,
Oh,
you can, and it doesn't factor against your rent if you have like housing. So
oh,
essentially it's extra money that you can earn, and it doesn't affect any of your benefits, because a lot of people fear that if they work
right,
receiving social security, that they'll lose their social security and lose their attendant care. And
right.
so this doesn't even touch it. It's like in some other category. So you can you can basically tack on money to your social security check. And it's just I mean, it's really ideal. I encourage people to do it. But I think that, yeah, I think an ombudsman type of position would be really great for, you know, people that are looking into going into the field.
And I think the ombudsman, I would like to see more disabled people with a disability consciousness in the ombudsman program. Um, I think in a lot of the helping professions right now, there is a lack of knowledge about disability theory, disability history, and disability rights. So even though many of the professions are, you know, coming from a strengths perspective, and some of them may even use the term social model, I'm not really seeing a substantive understanding of that.
Mhm.
And so I think as people with disabilities with a disability consciousness, we have the lived experience, and we, you know, we understand disability rights, we understand ableism, and I would really like to see more disabled people with ombudsman because of that, because I think it would make so many professions, and you know, just improve it tremendously. We need, you know, we need more disabled social workers, we need more disabled nurses and
Right.
psychologists, and
Right. No, I agree. And I think I agree with you. I think that would be an ideal, ideal job, or, you know, for or, you know, it'd be great. It would be great for the community. It would be great for the nursing facilities, the staff there.
Well, it's great for the residents because, you know,
Right.
I mean, for instance, you know, some of the young people that you know, I was talking about that have really infiltrated consciousness and have quite a lot of, they've been just so demoralized. You know, they're always like, wow, you know, you're in a power chair too, and you're doing all of this, you know? So it's a good, you know, you're modeling, you know, positive, you know, roles for disabled people, and you're, you know, it inspires people, just other disabled people, to realize their full capabilities when, you
Right.
know.
And I'm sure it helps the staff and the CNAs and the folks
Well,
that.
that's really interesting because I have to say I've experienced, I don't think they've come upon a disabled ombudsman before. And so there are times where I get quite a lot of, I experience quite a lot of ableism.
Mhm.
There have been several times where they've thought I was a resident. I've gone to like the nurse's station to talk to a nurse on behalf of a resident, and I'll just sit in my power chair, you know, tick, 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 and they won't look up at me. They won't acknowledge my presence. You know, it's like I fell through some sort of wormhole. But then I've seen, you know, other family members walk up and they talk right to them.
Right.
And so there was one time where one of the nursing home administrators thought I was a resident and was just kind of talking down to me. And so, you know, I had my ombudsman, we have to wear a badge, and I was like, I'm an ombudsman. But beyond that, it made me so sad. I'm like, but no one should be treated this way. The residents should not be treated this way. It doesn't matter if they're an ombudsman or not, you know.
Mhm.
They're human beings, and this is their home, and they're not your patients, and this isn't a scene from One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. And, you know, I don't, some people are young, they may not be familiar with
Yeah, I have like,
that.
yeah, it's a really great book that was adapted into a movie that starred Jack Nicholson, and it was about a man that was um, uh, uh, involuntarily, right? He was involuntarily put in a facility for mental, like a, you know,
It
mental
was, yeah,
illness.
it was a mental hospital, sort of the old model, way, way before, you know, the American with Disabilities Act was passed. It was a custodial model where residents have no rights. They have no right to self-determination or making decisions for themselves. And, you know, the nurse was, Nurse Ratched was very patronizing and demoralizing, and just, you know, it was so.
Jack Nicholson was the protagonist who kind of led a revolution inside the facility. And it was a book by Ken Casey, right?
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, and it was a very sad film, but at the same time, it had some really great moments and some, you know, some small bright moments throughout.
Yeah, the title is really ableist, but I think it says a lot about institutions and surveillance and the
Mhm.
segregation of people with disabilities.
And
But
I
there was
thought that was probably one of the only movies that's ever really taken place inside a nursing facility, other than maybe Awakenings
oh
with
yeah,
Williams and what is it, Robert? Oh,
that
what's
was,
his name?
I remember that. Was that in the early 90s, like 90 or something? I vaguely.
Yeah, Awakenings, and that was based on a true story too. But
I run across Nurse Ratchets, and there are times where I'm like, you know, muttering that under my breath when I get, you know, in my car or my van going home. And but so yeah, I experience, um, you know, some injustice because I'm, you know, disabled.
right,
But so,
right.
but the residents love me. I think I have a great relationship with them,
Well,
and
and like I said, I think it's great that, you know, all the residents see that you are out there moving around doing your thing, and, you know, and that has to make them wonder, like, why are we this different? Like, what, you know? And so, you know, I think that that's great because, you know, when you don't, I think that one of the issues with the neuromuscular disability community is that you know, we're rare, it's a rare, you know, rare condition. A lot of our conditions are rare. And so for, up until, you know, social media, a lot of us just, we didn't have the power in numbers to communicate and connect and
Right.
be a shared experience.
No, we were so, it was very socially isolating.
Right. And so, in the power that came from knowing one another and learning from each other and hearing about it, it was very motivating and very exciting. And so, you know, it would be great if in numbers we could increase the Ombudsman program to have more people that that look, or, you know, may look or have a similar close experience to the residents.
Right.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you know, but that's a lot to pack, you know, as far as, you know, I think that would be very difficult for me in a lot of ways. And I really admire the fact that you're doing what you're doing, because, like I said, I think
it is difficult because we don't have the distance that some non-disabled people do, you know, because so many people, I hear this all the time from the residents. I never thought in a million years I was going to end up in a nursing home. I always said I was going to shoot myself first.
Right.
You know? And it's, but, you know, people like us, unfortunately, because of, you know, the structure of ableism, I feel like I have one wheel teetering over that abyss. So, you know, sometimes it's very emotionally taxing for me, and you never want to let your own emotions overwhelm you to where you're not putting, you know, the needs of the residents first, right? But there have been times where I've seen some really awful stuff, and you know, I have to say, I've, you know, driven home crying a couple of times.
Yeah.
It's tough. And then sometimes, you know, I
don't think you would be human if you didn't, you know, like,
no.